Hello, Inspired Misfits, and welcome back to the Faith the Inspired Therapist channel. Today, I'm going to be touching on the topic of attachment styles and talking specifically about what that may look like for the African American community and how that can sort of impact the relationships within that community. I think primarily I'm wanting to focus on that because a lot of the attention obviously is given to other communities and since we're kind of branching into mental health even more now, people are seeing the value of mental health. People are doing a lot of their own sort of shadow work and also wanting to improve themselves, have better relationships. I think it's important to factor in the topic of attachment styles in order to do that. So, we're specifically going to be looking at secure attachment and anxious attachment today, with the main focus being on anxious attachment since I think that's kind of relevant as well for today's time. So, whether you're single, dating, married, understanding these patterns can definitely profoundly influence how you navigate your connections. So, I'm going to be focused more on that and how that is playing out within the community overall. So again, we're going to look at the two styles of anxious attachment. I'm sorry, two styles of attachment, um, including anxious attachment and secure attachment. We're going to be focused on those two styles that come from our interactions with early caregivers. That can come from different types of dynamics within families. So it doesn't always have to be, one parent household, two parent household, grandparents. It can be any family dynamic where there has been inconsistent parenting or caregiving that a child has experienced. And it may not even be intentionally inconsistent. It could be that something actually happened to break up that consistency for that child. But a lot of times, if there is the experience of someone being there and then suddenly not being there, or not feeling as if they could connect with that parent in a meaningful and nurturing way, then a lot of times that can lead to anxious attachment for people. Times what can happen is that our early experiences then later inform how we relate to others. And so, what that's going to look like is starting to impact our relationships that we have with other people. Now, as we become adults, that becomes very important because a lot of people are seeking some sort of partnership. They want someone around that they can relate to and have a good relationship with, have a good partnership with. That becomes harder when certain types of attachment styles are involved. So it's important to be able to address those attachment styles after recognizing what they are and using some different tools that can be present in order to improve upon those attachment styles. I also say that attachment styles are often on a spectrum. So it's not necessarily that one person is primarily and only one attachment style. You're going to find those attachment styles living on a spectrum and a lot of times, depending on who you interact with, different elements of attachment are going to start to show up. You can have a person who is securely attached, and when they interact with a person who has anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant, that brings out something different in them as well. So there are these kind of underlying streams that can be there as a result of our interactions. So the more that we know about that attachment, the more that we are likely to be able to work on that and hopefully improve some of our relationships and the foundations of those relationships. So imagine a child who feels as if maybe sometimes they don't get the nurturing that they need. They may see that their caregiver is there and present at points in time, but then there's going to be other times where they don't have access to that caregiver. Maybe they don't receive the love, affection, nurturing, care that they, are seeking and that they want. And so a lot of times that is going to start to be seen in anxious attachment. A child is more likely to have anxious attachment where that is the case. The way that this can sometimes look in our community is that the dynamics are going to be presented because there can be mental health that has been involved. Like we talked about, mental health hasn't been something that has been a huge focus. It's getting more attention now, I think, really since COVID and kind of how that has exacerbated a lot of issues for a lot of people. And so there's a higher demand for mental health information, a higher demand on mental health supports. But prior to that, a lot of mental health conditions would go ignored, or they just kind of be considered as this person in the family who has this thing going on. And nobody was willing to talk about that or address it. And so, what that can do for a child is their parent may be present for them in the times where they can be emotionally available and accessible. But then you're going to have the times where a parent is struggling with their own mental health and cannot be accessed, not of any fault of the parent, because they may actually be trying, but mental health is a barrier to the amount of care that they can provide to their child potentially. And so, what can happen then in that relationship is a child notices that their parent is there for them sometimes, and then other times the parent is just not there. They can't connect with the parent in a way that is meaningful. And so that kind of creates this kind of shift in instability with the parent. Could be both parents, where there's kind of this back and forth of trying to connect with that parent and attach to that parent. And it's just not something that's available because the parent's mental health could be getting in the way. Another example of this might be a parent who is struggling with maybe maintaining their relationship with their family of origin, feeling as if they have a lot more responsibility towards their family of origin than they do to their current family or their nuclear family that they're trying to build with someone else. That can also come in and potentially be a distraction. We know a lot of times that there are multiple levels of responsibility that family members hold in our community, especially when community is valued and when family is valued. That can often be the case. And so, if there's a primary caregiver who feels like their attention may be split because of their maybe enmeshment with their family of origin or their attachment to their family of origin, that will also potentially send a message to that child that that parent isn't always going to be available for them because there are other priorities in place. So it'll be important, in order to combat that at an early age, to make sure that there is a good balance there, that that child is still receiving the care and the nurturing, recognizing that their needs are still important, balancing that out with the needs of maybe the needs and the responsibilities that a person may have to their family of origin and to the community. If they hold a high position in their community and a lot of responsibilities, it's important that that child still knows that they are a priority, and that their attachment style can be considered, more secure as a result. Because if it's not, a lot of times, then that is also going to be a contribution to anxious attachment. What we're also going to see in the African American community are other concerns that can exacerbate the feeling of anxiety within a relationship. So we know that racial discrimination and other factors can stem part of the concerns of an anxious partner. So if they're not hearing from their partner, they may have concerns around the safety of that partner, about whether or not that partner will return. There are those very real concerns in our society, since there are certain things that have happened historically where people do end up being harmed, or there is some type of need to know where our partners are, and what they're doing. And so a lot of times that can also be a factor, and people will think that that person is just trying to keep tabs on them. You may be dealing with someone with an anxious attachment style who's also taking into consideration some of the disparities of safety that are involved in our country, or in North America. So it is going to be important for some additional measures maybe to take place in order for that anxious attachment person, or that person with anxious attachment, to feel more secure in their relationship if they've experienced any sort of challenges around safety, or if there are economic disparities that sometimes happen within the relationship, recognizing that that can also contribute to that feeling of instability or not completely being safe, because things can be very much unpredictable, or kind of up and down at different times depending on where things are financially. So having that level of security is very important for a person who does have an anxious attachment style, and they can build upon that. There are ways and tools and coping skills that they can implement to try and help them manage some of the anxiety within a relationship. I've put together certainly a workbook for people who have anxious attachment styles, to be able to focus more on that and improving building upon that, learning how to become more, excuse me, become more secure in their relationships, and being able to, implement some different things for themselves so that they can feel better. Because anxiety is not something that a person is going to be completely comfortable with either. It can be a very distressing emotion. And so, helping that person with anxious attachment to feel more secure in a relationship is only going to bode better for the relationship itself. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about secure attachment. A lot of times, for children who are raised in environments that promote secure attachment, what we're more than likely going to see are children who have come to terms with their caregivers being accessible, being trusted, being consistent. And so, knowing that that is there is going to also let them know they can access their feelings and feel safe sharing those feelings, having those feelings addressed in their environment. So, a lot of times these children are going to feel more open. They're going to have the lines of communication that they need to have with their parents. The feelings are going to be respected. Of course, the child doesn't rule everything still as a result of being able to talk about certain topics with their parent, but there is a safe environment to do so, and they feel comfortable being able to have those discussions. In these families, a child is also more likely to feel comfortable discussing things like the racial disparities that happen, the discrimination if they experience any in schools. They're going to feel supported by their parents in doing so. These types of environments are also likely to create a healthy self esteem. So the child is going to feel supported to go and explore new endeavors and be able to bring the results of those endeavors back to their parents. They're going to feel more comfortable and confident in their life experiences. So, that healthy self esteem is really important. That sense of balance and confidence is really going to be important. And you're going to see that more so in families where there can be, secure attachment endeavors. For a lot of African American couples, a secure base can be a challenging balance to have when you're dealing with a lot of external stressors. But what we would expect in a relationship that has secure attachment, the same things are going to be able to be present. So that partner is going to be able to go out and explore things that are interests of theirs, without feeling a lot of pressure. They're going to feel safe to do so as long as it isn't harming the relationship. They're going to be feeling comfortable to come back, to their partner and talk about some of those things that they're exploring and what their interests are. And they're going to have that investment from their partner in listening to them about those different experiences and encouraging them. So if you have two people who are leaning towards secure attachment, that is what you would be more likely to see. And also, if there are the difficult and challenging times, those partners are going to feel safe coming to each other, having those difficult conversations about what they've experienced, dealing with the hard feelings maybe associated in the relationship as well. So they're going to feel more safe to confront issues that are showing up between them. And it's not to say, again, because we are on that spectrum, it's not to say that there's not going to be certain things that trigger them or that incite them towards anxiety or shutting down and running away. But if they are committed to working towards secure attachment together, you would see a lot of those elements start to, I don't know, maybe melt away. And the two would be able to focus on coming more together and providing a solid base for one another where they could still feel safe again to kind of be their own person, step out and engage in things that bring them joy in life and bring that joy back to the relationship. Understanding attachment styles is crucial, not just for the individual relationships, but also how those relationships are intertwined throughout the community overall. If we know that we can be safe in our home relationships, then we can also take that into our communities, and be able to deal with some of the factors in life that we're having to deal with on a daily basis that we don't have any control over. Personal triggers that people are experiencing in relationships, they don't have to be something that breaks the relationship. If people are able to communicate about those in safe environments and begin to work with each other to create a more securely attached dynamic within the relationship, that's actually something that can create a greater and a deeper bond. It is something that can be used to further the relationship overall. Practicing open communication and also sharing one's needs are going to be key points in creating a secured attachment style within a relationships. Healthy relationships also require space as much as they require closeness. So it is important for people to have their own interests and be able to separate out away from the relationship. If you're around each other all the time, there's really not a chance to grow and develop on your own terms, and still have the independence that is necessary in order to have interdependence within a relationship. Completely being enmeshed is sometimes a danger of anxious attachment, where it can become where that person becomes really and fully involved in the relationship to a point where they lose themselves and their own ability to kind of think critically about what's going on, denying a lot of their needs and wants in order to maintain the relationship. And so that's going to be an important factor that needs to continue to be explored. Also, since people are not on one spot and one fixed place when it comes to attachment, it's important to recognize that those dynamics may shift throughout the course of a relationship, where maybe one person does demonstrate more anxious attachment or secure attachment or any of the other attachment styles, and will need some help to develop and strengthen themselves so that the unhealthier aspects of the relationship are not what comes in and kind of takes over. Ultimately, doing what you can to support your partner's growth, support and celebrate their successes is going to lead to a healthier and more secured attachment style. Working through these different things, asking yourselves the difficult questions about what each partner needs. Those are going to be the things that lay the foundation for continued relationship, and it must be a safe place in order for those types of conversations to occur. So, hopefully, you did get some value out of this overall. I do appreciate you joining me with this discussion on anxious and secure attachment, and specifically what may show up in specific communities, and being able to utilize what we know about anxious and secure attachment in order to have stronger bonded relationships with people pursuing that so much. It's important to know some of the different aspects that can be included and try to have secure relationships being the end result, where people can still develop and grow, but do so in an environment where they feel safe to do so. So, thank you again for watching. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share if there are people that you know that would like to be a part of the Inspired Misfit community and learn some additional information from me, Faith, the Inspired Therapist.